So what are the lessons that we take from our 10 years of democracy? That there will be no big changes overnight, that we have to take small incremental steps towards democracy.
We need to stop projecting our politicians and politics as negative, because if you do that, we cannot attract the best and retain the best.
Today, if you look at the four political parties, can you really segregate us into clear political ideologies? Are there clear distinctions between these four parties?
Let's ask this question: what have you done to make democracy strong? What have I done to make democracy strong? What have we done as political leaders? What have we done to make democracy strong?
Lily Wangchuk's presentation and the point she made about a negative image of politicians being encouraged. Stop demonizing them. Encourage, the best to come forward instead. And I think there's a point there, because this image of the politician was established before we had politicians. I think this influence, whether it's the influence of the neighborhood, influence of stereotype thinking, but I'd like to ask, is this a problem? Is the Bhutanese politician unfairly, targeted and demonized?
The image of political parties and in particular politicians must be improved. And for the very fact that in a democracy, political parties and politicians are the main players. And therefore, if we portray the image of a very bad image of a political party or politicians, then it is going to create disillusion among the people. It's going to create confusion. It is going to make the people lose their faith in the political system itself, and that is going to really affect the nurturing of a democracy and the flourishing of a democracy.
I also believe that politicians are unfairly demonized. But having said that, the politicians also need to look into themselves. Is it their behavior that actually compels the citizens, the larger mass, to have that opinion? I think that is also important. But in Bhutan, such a small country, we take pride in saying that gross national happiness is our development philosophy. We also take pride in saying that we are a deeply spiritual society. But can we also redefine our politics, that politics is not dirty, politics can be clean? And I think that responsibility lies with all of us.
As Fareed Zakaria, the famous, one of the well-known CNN political analysts said, I think it's a global phenomenon, democratic recession, he calls it. I think this is mainly fueled because of politicians everywhere around the world perceived as hungry for power, only talking about top tongues, how much more can I make. I think those have fueled this belief. And as Tashu said, I think it's in the interest of everyone, especially politicians, that we stay according to our principles and set good examples for future generations.
Thank you very much. As I was saying, Dr. Thandi was quite optimistic, I thought. But how are our parties, our politicians seeking votes? Are people voting entirely based on promises? And which comes to the question, do we need to make more effort in establishing and identifying and conveying political ideologies by the parties?
People often ask, what is your ideology? But I guess for all the parties, the ultimate goal will be the gross national happiness. The only thing is values that you pick up. But talking about, I'd like to go to specifically to not to ideology, but the pledges. I like to believe that it's all about winning by hook or crook. So when you are bent on winning by hook or crook, you will not spare anything. You can be divisive. You can, in fact, do anything. The experience over the last 10 years is with that attitude of winning by hook or crook. Political corruption, the electoral corruption, why has it come about? So it's also about the short-term gain as well as the unethical behavior of political parties and politicians. So that's why I think the political parties have to go beyond 5 years. It's not only about 5 years. The country is not about 5 years. The party is just a means. Party is not the end. And I think this is what the education that the party has the responsibility to advocate, and the citizens must understand. But when you look at the larger mass, it's not so.
I think one of the realizations that political parties had when we were in Denmark, when we went on a study tour, was that our aspiration for our country was all very similar, in the sense that we are looking at strengthened sovereignty, security, greater self-reliance, prosperity. Our objectives are very similar, but it's just that our approaches makes us different. And I think because the approaches makes us different, that probably might put us in different groups of ideology. So currently, as you all are aware, I think parties in Bhutan have not really differentiated themselves along ideological differences, with everyone probably saying, coming up with similar aspirations for the country.
I would think that politicians, parties would want to seek votes based on both the promises, which I would like to call as pledges, and not just mere empty promises, and also based on ideology. So that's exactly what we did, the People's Democratic Party did in 2013. We had very specific pledges to the people, and we all had also pledges that were to be that had to be fulfilled in 100 days. And of course, we also had an ideology, and that is the decentralization, which perhaps deserves to be brought to the forefront, and therefore it has been a mix of ideology and pledges. Now, I don't agree that political parties obtain their votes by hook or crook.
I think that this issue really leaves a question with all of us also, all of us as citizens, all of us as voters. I mean, in the absence of very clear-cut ideologies, and then the whole issue of promises and pledges, I think over the next few months, I mean, many of us would like to know, like a clear stance from our potential leaders on the question, why should I vote for you? I think that's a question we take away. And I would like to add that all the youth and gender are very commonly discussed issues. All the speakers actually referred to gender already. I think you, please ask your question on the empowerment of youth.
How would you describe the state of citizenship education amongst youth at this point? And what do you have to offer in order to improve that as well?
Thank you. I think we can take that as the involvement of youth in politics. What has 10 years of democracy taught our youth? What have we taught our youth in this process?
Whenever we look at youth, we always look at our youth as problems, isn't it? Huh? Drug addiction law, suicide law. But I've engaged with the youth, whether it is in schools or even in my last 2 years in the village. So heartwarming. Even this time when I went to Tsirang and Dagana, lot of youth on the farming, on the farm. And if youth, you were mentioning especially the citizenship education, I think some sort of citizenship education is there, isn't it? And this sort of education has to start from home. Even when I talk to mothers, parents, I tell them that don't distinguish between your children, your daughter and son. Empower your daughter. Don't tell, okay, daughter, you come and sweep and cook and send your child out to play with a gun, but let the son also. So I think this sort of education, whether it is citizenship or whatever, from the childhood, and it's not also the responsibility of the parents. So let's not look at the parties. What do you have to offer? So let's say, how can we engage? Is there a space for youth to engage? There's a parliamentary democracy, youth parliament democracy. How are we engaging there? And if the youth parliament is emulating our parliament, you better think twice.
Thank you.
So I think we need to create the space.
When we talk about empowering youth, I think it's very important in our democracy to fulfill the aspirations of youth themselves. And by that, I think there needs to be an opportunity for them, better opportunities for them, and to have a future that they can look forward to. And the activities such as the youth parliament, at least in terms of democracy, has been very good. I think it's taking up across the country, and they will play a better part in strengthening democracy, so no, Ms. Shuni. And as the third king once said, that he wished for a brighter future during his son's time. Therefore, all of us, we hope that the democracy in future in our youth's time will be much better than what it is today, Sunil.
Countries where civic education had been done before introduction of democracy, democracy had worked really well. And in countries where not adequate civic education had been carried out, there has been challenges. I had put this recommendation across to the Election Commission of Bhutan, but unfortunately, the focus had been largely on voter education and not on civic education. So one of the biggest challenges we have with our democracy right today is, I think, really because we've not carried out adequate civic education in our country, and we still haven't done anything about it in the last 10 years. So when it comes to voter education and student, I think this is, I believe, the Election Commission has initiated Bhutan Children's Parliament and the democracy forums in schools. I'm not sure how active and effective is that, but the fact is, forget about other citizens, even our students have not had the opportunity to get educated on the essence of democracy. On the other hand, political parties and aspiring politicians have no opportunity to interact even with students. So if it was not for a forum like this, there wouldn't have been any other forum where we could have this cross-discussion of ideas.
Well, it would be an understatement to say that our youth are not aware of the democratic process, or that they are not aware of their rights and the Constitution. I think within the last 10 years, a lot of work has gone into creating awareness, not just among the educated lot, but among the electorates as well. There's been a lot of work being done by the Election Commission, a lot of work being done by the schools, and of course the media. It is only a matter of time, I think, that our youth will become fully conscious of their role in democracy, of their rights under the Constitution, and at the same time play a very constructive role in the building of our nation.
This question comes from two sources. One's from outside the country, and someone in this room has also asked, political parties are represented by the workers at the grassroots level. Understanding the complexity gets worse at grassroots level. Whose responsibility is it to advocate and educate grassroots political workers about democracy, to unite rather than to divide?
Civic education across the country has to be carried out by an organization that's neutral. It's not the responsibility of Election Commission, neither political party. There has to be a neutral CSO that can effectively carry out civic education across all sectors.
The education, I think it comes back to education. When you talk about students' understanding about democracy and students, the youth's voice in democracy, if it can be integrated into the education itself. The voice of a student when a class is going on, if he disagrees with the teacher, the ownership of environment, that's our environment, the understanding of interdependence, I think it again goes back to education. We can have wonderful school buildings, but what goes in the classroom, I think that's important, that's quite central. The electorate, the education of electorate, I think it's everybody's responsibility. I would like to go back to the statement that I made about a GUP, whom I found was perhaps one of the most enlightened public servants in my 11 months of political life. He said, the problem created in the field, the division created, the divisive force, is actually the party apparatus at the grassroots. At the end of the day, why do you need the party apparatus to mobilize crowd for the meetings? Why can't the local government do that? How can we really say that the local government is apolitical? Just as Dr. Tanya was saying that when all the resources are at the disposal of the government and the opposition, the other parties, just because they are not in the parliament or the level playing field is not there. So even that suggestion is there. But at the end of the day, the education of the electorate, whether it is in the form of a party apparatus, whether it is in the form of voters or children, I think the responsibility of educating lies with everybody. The Zongdas, what are they doing about it? Apolitical, so distance. No, I think we need to really redefine apoliticalness of these institutions. GUP, for example, they can do a lot. Teachers, political parties have a big responsibility. I believe that political, and of course, most importantly, the Election Commission of Bhutan. They just cannot issue orders saying that you can do this, you can. I find it very obnoxious when somebody says that you can have gatherings, but no political parties. No political. Are we with horns? Why do we become different when we become a politician? Are we so contagious? Do we have contagious diseases? So this outlook, this attitude has to change. This is, for me, very fundamental. The education has to be everybody's duty. Of course, most important, these institutions. And we cannot wait between what happens between elections. I think is very important. We must continue to have such discourses, big and small. We have to and be enlightened about democracy.
What is really apolitical? We are talking about the GUPs at the local government. They were doing elections far before democracy was introduced. GUPs were being elected at the Georg level. They are much more knowledgeable about the election process and who to pick as the candidate. I think the fundamental problem lies in keeping the local government apolitical. For political parties to have grassroots presence, it's very difficult with the present setup, say Shunil. Therefore, should we change? Should we make political participation possible at the local government? Should GUPs be members from political parties? Those are experiences that we need to perhaps study over the next few elections. Because then that brings another question. Is it time to change our electoral laws? Should we amend our constitution? Basically, I think this is all of our responsibility to educate people at the grassroots.
Well, there has been a lot of debate during the drafting of the constitution on this concept of apolitical. In order to have an efficient check, in order to separate politics from neutrality, we have created a lot of apolitical institutions. For instance, the National Council is supposed to be apolitical. The local governments are supposed to be apolitical. The civil servants are supposed to be apolitical. So, which basically means that there is a lot of benefit and meritocracy in having apolitical institutions and apolitical bodies, which will then act as a check and balance on the political parties.
On one hand, democracy is a gift, and on the other hand, institutions have made a very narrow interpretation of apolitical. Because of this, one would understand apolitical would mean not being affiliated and associated with a political party. But here we have a very narrow definition in the sense that aspiring politicians and political parties are not allowed to have any interaction with students, civil servants, the educated lot, because educated lot are working with different institutions. So especially during campaign, the only people we get to interact with is rural voters. So the urban civil servants and educated lot are supposed to make their choice based on media coverage. And if the media coverage is biased, it can highly influence your political choice as well. I think there is already a huge challenge there. Political parties and aspiring politicians, wherever we go, we are looked upon with a lot of suspicion and mistrust, as if we are there to pursue our own political agenda and we are not there for the right reasons. And I think this is one of the main reasons where Dr. Netal also pointed out why some people have to be under this mask. We cannot be ourselves.
Democracy of the people, by the people, for the people. Right now, I think ours is turning into democracy for the political party, by the political party, of the political party, because everybody is apolitical. At the end of the day, local government is highly politicized. I think we should not be in that environment of do's and don'ts. If we can build trust, that's why I think that trust is so important, that confidence is so important. Perhaps we'll be more professional. Let's take the example of Dr. Kinlo was mentioning about civil servants not being apolitical. If we work in an environment, build that trust and confidence, I'm sure the civil servants, because at the end of the day, civil service is the pool that all the political parties will also fish their candidates from. But if you have the trust and confidence, the professionalism, the civil servants, once they decide to join, they must have the moral duty to resign. And I think civil servants have to engage. They cannot say that I'm going to join and wait until June, July.
How do we avoid being over-dependent on one neighbor, one country.
Overly dependent on one source of assistance. 77% of our loan comes from one source, or I don't know, 60-something% or 80% of source of our development assistance comes from one source. Is it healthy? Perhaps it's not healthy. As citizens, we need to look at it.
30 years ago, we declared self-reliance as our goal, but today I think we are not any closer, but rather I think we are more dependent on aid than we ever were. So the answer would be trade and not aid, and investing in the human resources. As a small country, I think human resources is our biggest asset. We need to invest in the human resources and capitalize on them. For sustainable economic development to take place, we need adequate foreign reserve. If we want foreign reserve, we need to step up on our local production.
We have come thus far with the support, and there's no need to play politics. We are talking about India, our neighbor. They have been providing us with all the support that we need, and we continue to have that relationship. While this may not be healthy in the long term, we must also accept our geopolitical reality. We are landlocked. The geopolitical reality should be aware by everyone. And as we go ahead, we must all have consultation, deliberate on this, and find avenues. As we graduate from a lower to a middle income country, we must look for other avenues of sources for funds, and also what Amnetan said, self-reliance to strengthen our own internal sources of revenue. Shunila.
This one quite pointed question to political parties, Mel. It's coming back to divisive politics. What can the parties do to unite themselves and unite our society?
What can the political parties do? We can do a lot of things. We can work together. Maybe we should remove the party apparatus, and the local government help facilitate all the parties on the same platform with the same disposition in mobilizing crowd. And then let's work together. Like, for example, a very good example, recently we were out in the field, of course our DNT colleague is also there, that I heard that 3 parties, the candidates are moving around together. How so wonderful. Can we say that you'll have different things to say, it's okay. But it was such a wonderful example, and I think we should do more of that. At the end of the day, we are choices that we're offering to the people. Can we work together? Challenges that face are common to us. Can we discuss about it together? I think so. And the leadership, I think it's so important that the leadership has to very clearly instruct down the line and should not be worried about losing votes. Even if you have to remove a very influential coordinator just because he or she is being very aggressive, we should have the courage to remove him.
To wish for no division at all when there are political parties is a little far-fetched. It is inevitable that people will be divided along party lines. What is important is after the elections, the government that is formed, parties, that has a greater responsibility, say Shunila. Rangimi se chu thenida, phagimi se phapchi janidi. This is unacceptable, and that trend, unfortunately, has set this division even further. And that is why I always feel that the parties that win the elections, they have a greater responsibility to bring unity and harmony after the elections, to tell people that we are one Bhutanese, that all the plans and programs that we are implementing is for the larger interest of all the people, irrespective of which party you are in, Shunila.
Firstly, I think we'll need to carry out adequate civic education so that while certain amount of division is inevitable, the people are not largely divided because of the political differences. So civic education, educating people on the essence of democracy, I think is really the key. What would also help is if political parties agree to stay away from divisive politics and commit themselves to compete only on ideas and competence of candidates. And as I proposed earlier today, signing a commitment pledge, where disputes and non-compliance can be resolved through intra-party mechanism, through multi-party committee, through BDD. And I think most important is the will and political commitment of all party leaders to safeguard and nurture our democracy so that we are able to shape our democracy, make that into a model democracy in the world and fulfill His Majesty's vision for this country?
Well, it is, as our colleague said, inevitable that certain division of opinion will be there, and which is very healthy for a democracy. We should encourage, parties should encourage discourse among themselves so that there is a clear understanding of what the national priorities are. And of course, after the election is over, there has to be a vigorous healing process in which the party leaders can play a very constructive role.
The last question or last comments I would request from our speakers is, because we have a group, two very strong groups here. One group, civil society and media group. So in the role of civil society and media in democratic governance.
What is heartening is that the number of civil society organizations has increased tremendously. However, in the area of democracy, I think there are a limited number of players who are actively involved in the democratic process. And as Amlili also pointed out, I think it's important that we have, for example, the BCMD, and we have other CSOs that help to organize such forums that bring political parties, civil servants, students all together, and where we have this kind of discourse to further strengthen our democracy. On the media, I think absolutely important for our democratic process. Unfortunately, they have not had the progress that we all expect, but it is important that any government that comes supports and helps CSOs and the media to improve and to get better. Shunila.
I've worked in a CSO, and I know that the potential that CSO has in strengthening democracy, whether it is in governance, whether it is in people's voice, or whether it is in development activities. But how much of space does the CSOs have, even in terms of resources? Can we also outsource some of our activities? And some of the CSOs have done such wonderful jobs. I also believe that politics is a very big CSO. Media. I would like to be politically correct in saying that, yes, sustainability media fraternity, the fourth state or the fifth state of democracy. But I would like to ask the media fraternity, how independent are you? Are you also one of the sources of division? Are you also encouraging, stirring, constructive public discourse?
Your integrity is a strong measure of the health of our democracy. And CSOs and media is very much part of the political process. And you are important voices of people. Because political parties and aspiring politicians don't get opportunity to interact with people, I think you can be that very strong and powerful medium to carry forward the voices of people and to engage in more dialogue with political parties so that we can carry the hopes and aspirations and challenges of the people forward. Media has a very important role to play. Having worked with media during my term with BMF, I'm aware you do work under a lot of challenges, you do work under a lot of constraints. But having said that, you can play a key role in ensuring the success of our media by reporting in a fair manner, free from fear and favor.
The media must also be careful and move away from adversarial politics. Media must also refrain from reporting people as helpless victims of the state and the political institution. Civil societies can also promote political participation. They can also help to develop other values of democratic life, such as tolerance and compromise. And above all, they can complement the government in its efforts at the local level, both in terms of policies and implementation of programs. And at the national level, they can involve in the policy-making decision.
Kagira tata kachilo zaksurup te beru ngachira ki zongkha keji gyo nyanga gi te dinsabe kachilo ombukeji ngachom chigi member zongkha keji da gyo nyanga gi ombukeji khatulu te nabati sugi thalam da ne kap kachi sumji tesuga de dewa tungbu chi juge junila.
So for the general audience who couldn't hear properly this, we've had gender, we've had youth, we have different issues, and we also, what are we doing for the disabled section of our community?
the ompujenji tunglu pe beojing achirigi soyegi khatri beojing kachi bego bibina sheri khatri beojing kachi bego bibina te dizumbe achirigi chirtang misegi khatule pena te chimdi suchabdalu tinnalu ompujenji zugi te ya dentegule zik jomasu dalu tinna lift khatri chugo bibina tinnalu achirigi lamdisu khatri zogun disu ngache ka ara lejimbe ewachi chisunila te ewachebdalu te begob dile asha du mangile borche totober junimbe dibiole tendibe ngachegi te disukara chaji chuniba nalu te tukdibe US shunila te tidarube ngachegi te labartu najin ombochenchin disugi tenle te lobda najumi disugi tenle ngachegi te lobda sosobera te namasime te tarinabagi te lamluda thidigibe ngachegi khoche disu tukdigibe te dudem chichamnigi ngache chaji chunimeda te tebe chaji disu US shuni
te ngachegi mapa garagi te chokpa garagi beroe te cho 띄용세 노멜라 땡같이 가틀레 베레 자지디수 레짐베 같이 대참디 유티 나바나스 같이 켈랑셀도 나 피용세 슈닐
I think it's a reminder that we all need to get involved in this discourse to take our country forward. The Constitution and the whole process of democracy itself gives us the mandate to place national interest before personal interest, it places a mandate on political parties to ensure a united society, not a divided one, and also good governance, security, sovereignty, check and balance, good governance. I think it's better that we leave this place with hundreds of questions more to be asked, and with the eagerness, with the enthusiasm to continue this discourse, to start discussing this very, very complex issue. Okay. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tasho. On behalf of Bhutan Center for Media and Democracy, BDD and RUB, I would like to thank all the speakers for your very candid and passionate sharing of your views and perspectives on issues. And a big thank you to everyone here. We did not really expect such a huge gathering, but I'm so glad that we were able to accommodate you, and we look forward to similar support in the future. Thank you.